Hey, Jen.
What's up, Eileen?
Well, I wanted to say welcome to those of you who are dialing in right now. And for those of you who are watching this afterwards, we're really grateful to have you be a part of this. This is our second LinkedIn Live session for 15 minutes of learning with our Brave Human Leadership. And um, yeah, it was a lot of fun last week, and it was just
Yes.
we got a lot of good feedback. One of the things I just want to encourage folks, even before we dive in, is if there are topics that you're interested in or things that we can start talking about that would be helpful for you as a leader, definitely reach out and let us know. And please connect with us. More than happy to connect with you and learn more about what you're doing and how we can potentially bring up some topics that might be helpful for you.
I love it.
So, again, I'm Eileen Grimes, Chief Growth Officer with Jalen Consulting, and I'm here with the amazing founder and Chief Inspiration Officer, Jen Kronberger. So, Jen, last week we talked about, the 5 things that leaders need to know about the neuroscience of connection, and so much fun and really interesting stuff. From that, we sort of ended on a piece that actually we've had a few people even in the past week starting to bring up about wanting to know a little bit more, so that was where we decided to kind of focus today. And so really it's we wanted to talk about the 5 reasons why storytelling in leadership matters. So I'm going to pass it to you real quickly just to kind of talk through what we brought up last week from the neuroscience perspective, and um, why is it that storytelling is so powerful.
So, first of all, thanks for that. Hello, everyone. Good to see you again. These are fun. I'm enjoying this.
Right?
It's a glimpse into our everyday conversations.
Yeah.
we,
Come join us.
yeah, we spend hours just talking about this kind of stuff together and really wanting to bring the best that we can to you. So that's really where a lot of this comes from. But I mean, these are our everyday conversations. So you just get to kind of jump in and be a part of them. So when we talked last time, we talked a lot about the neuroscience behind connection and why that works. So we thought, this idea of storytelling is taking that next step, right? How do we develop that? And it's something you hear about a lot, for leaders. Leaders need to be good storytellers. I think everybody needs to be good storytellers, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's how we connect with each other. That's something that, it goes back through our history and our lineage. And it's an important piece of what brings us together as human beings, right? So when we think about the neuroscience behind it, we talked a little bit last time. We talked about synchrony or coupling, neural coupling, which is where those sensory based areas of the brain find that connection with each other, right? So the ones that connect to us kind of have the same ideas or feelings around those same subjects as us. As human beings, we're programmed for stories. So let's think about this for a second. They're part of who we are. It's like I said, it's kind of been this evolved um, sentiment to kind of understand our place in the world, right? Before we had written language, think about it. It was pictures, right?
Right.
This is how we developed thought patterns, and how we really kind of passed on like lessons and where to find food, or what threats were there, or all of these different
Right.
things that we had to share with each other, information, how to build relationships between tribes and families, and all of these things. As human beings, we are programmed to respond to stories, right? That is kind of the bottom line. But a couple things happen when we hear stories. So I want to do something really quick. And I just kind of scribbled this down right before we jumped on here because I thought
I'm so excited.
this might be interesting. So I want you to take a look at this. Now, don't laugh at my scribbling, but I'm just going to put that out there for a second and, take a quick look and see what you see. And okay. And then I want you to listen to this really quickly. So I was standing in this large auditorium. It was like this old wooden stage. Those red velvet curtains that hang on either side of like an old gymnasium. The lights were really dim. It smelled, I don't know, musty, almost like an old library. I asked the audience, who filled the seats all the way in the back half of the room, to each get up and move forward to the front half of the room. It was loud. People talk as they move, right? You can hear like the chatter. 1/3 followed my direction. 2/3 of the group kind of went to the sides of the room because they followed the tall woman in the really sparkly green shirt. Her hair was in this like perfect bun on the top of her head. You know who she is. She led effortlessly. There's a difference
Mm-hmm.
in this and what I just shared. And there's things that we remember because of those triggers that happen, because we paint the story in our own minds and we see those things that pop up and we say, yeah, I know what that looks like. I've seen that before. And we make a direct correlation in our brain to that picture that I just painted for you. You could smell it, couldn't you?
Mm-hmm. I wanted to touch the curtains, and I definitely wanted to see the dress. I can't. Jen might be frozen, so we're just gonna kind of give that 1 second.
Are we back?
There we go. Yeah.
Okay, sorry about that. I don't know what happened. That was weird.
That's okay.
I
No,
disappeared.
I was just saying that I definitely
Want
wanted
to feel
to
the
feel
shirt or see the shirt? Yeah. And
I
touch
wanted
the curtain.
all of the things.
Yeah.
All of the things.
Yeah. So this thing that happens, our brains run on this electrical pulse, right? So when we hear these stories, our brains light up. They call it like the city of your brain. I mean, it lights up dramatically on all different parts of the brain. And when we're hearing a story and our brain is lighting up, you have all these neurons then that are wiring together, which actually triggers us to remember more of the information that we're getting, right? Other than just small pieces, which is data, which, maybe the numbers, whatever that is, that fires only in one place in the brain. So
yeah, and
fascinating stuff, right?
It is. And I want to add to that too, just from a learning perspective, different, and just to enhance that, right? So as you're telling stories, the use of visualizations is also really helpful. So if you have, we don't want to say the PowerPoint, right? But if there's a visual tool that you have, some people, when they read or are hearing things, they don't process that as
Correct.
a picture in their
Yep.
head,
Yep.
right? And so if you can add to that and really enhance the storytelling with what you're also sharing possibly on the screen, it's just an option to be able to bring people in, bring all different types of people in who might have different ways of thinking and processing as well.
My first thought was when you said I wanted to touch the curtain, you're a kinesthetic learner. You want to
absolutely, yes.
Right? Okay. So immediately I thought that, like, yes, absolutely, because you want to touch and feel and be in it, right? So other people need, they're visual learners, other people are auditory learners. So absolutely 100% spot on. We enhance these things based on who we're talking to and how we know that those connections are made. That's everything.
Absolutely. Well, and the other piece too, so one of the sort of second things that, you and I were talking about too, was that, again, from that learning perspective, is there's a study published that talks about how people forget more than 40% of the information that's told to them the next day. 40%. So when you were telling me, you showed me that picture, right, with the graphs and stuff. Look, I'm a math person.
Yep.
I love my graphs. I love the numbers.
Yes.
And
right.
I'm going to remember that story you told me tomorrow. I'm going to remember the 2/3 of the group that, did what they were, or didn't do what they were supposed to be doing.
Right.
And, that whole piece really brought it together for me. So, what is it about sort of that visual process or that addition to storytelling that helps convey that message better than just numbers on the page?
I think, again, it goes back to that idea that relatability is everything. It's we have shared experiences as human beings. We all know what a we can picture, right? This idea of a stage, of a dimly lit auditorium, right? We can kind of smell a musty smell, might smell different to all of us, right? That stage looks different to all of us, but we know the concept because we can picture that, we can be in that, we've seen that. a green shirt, right? Unless you're colorblind, which
Mhm.
there are obviously some people who might not know green in that context.
Mhm.
But you're picturing a green sparkly shirt, right? Mine might
Mhm.
have sequins. Yours might just be, little bedazzled shirt or whatever it is, right? So we see it differently. Our detail might be different, but the concept and the feeling that we're after is the same. And so
Yeah.
that relatability, I think, we do that in every single conversation we have, right?
Mhm.
Every single conversation is is that idea of bringing those ideas together and bringing them to life.
Mhm.
You know, every relationship we have is just a series of conversations.
Right. Well, if you're talking, I mean, look, you and I were talking about meetings the other day and how
Yeah,
we don't even have to dive into that part yet. I think everyone else just felt that as soon as I said the word, really.
that's a whole topic
Um,
for another day, right?
it is.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
but when we talk about time efficiency as leaders and being able to communicate what we need, everyone's like, well, how do we do that without meetings?
Yeah.
Well, there are ways. So, storytelling is a great way to be able to convey very complex
Yeah.
messages in a concise way for people at all different levels. And when you're now not having to communicate this as many times
Right.
because people they haven't forgotten all the information that you told them,
Right.
you're also saving time,
Yeah. Absolutely.
right?
Well, that's why I think it's not just one person communicating to another person, right?
Mhm.
It's kind of that group understanding,
Yeah.
right? Does
Yep.
that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, and that's how we share structures. That's how we share and understand our culture together is by how we communicate. What is it that I'm communicating with this group that informs who I am? And we're sharing a piece of ourselves
Right.
in that
That's
work. When you're telling me these stories, I mean, I learned so much about you. I love watching all your TED Talks and I whatever, but I know so much about you because of the way that you share yourself in your story. And we learn our leaders and what their qualities are and what they stand for in the way that they're storytelling.
You know, it's funny you say that. I think one of the fun parts of storytelling is finding the number one, finding those connections with each other. But I mean,
Mhm.
think about you're in a bar with your friends. You are not whipping out data points and graphs, right? Like we're not.
Well,
You might be.
just kidding.
All right, let me rephrase that. Most of us, right? But think about it. We tell stories to each other all the time. So, oh, I'm not good at that. Yes, you are.
Yeah.
It's what you do every day. It's what you do with your friends. We tell stories. We talk about things. I mean, think about if you had to give a presentation with a whole bunch of information and you had to do it with your friends in the bar. Would
Yeah.
you whip out a PowerPoint? No. You
No.
would talk in ideas and thoughts and pictures and maybe grab a cocktail napkin and scribble something, draw something. Whatever it is, the way that we can do that with clarity and be as authentic as possible, because that's what it is. I mean, when you're with your friends and family and the people who you're closest to, you're typically the most authentic that
Yeah.
as you ever show up. So, when you think about that, I think one of the things is we have to practice that in the workplace. We have to practice that authenticity, the vulnerability of being able to share ourselves a little
Mhm.
bit more as human beings. You don't have to talk about your deepest, darkest secrets at work. That's not what we're saying. But we're
Mhm.
saying you have to build relationships based on your authentic self, who you are as a human being. And we touch into that. I mean, that's all a part of really learning how to be a good storyteller, is
Mhm.
being able to tell your own.
Yeah. Definitely. And the other piece too, so just, I mean, sort of adding on to that, and we have a few different things we want to share with folks about, ways that they can start doing some of this work to help craft their storytelling narrative and to be able to start practicing that. But the other piece too, as a leader, when you're sharing a story, so if I'm going through we're talking about change, right? Like, so if we have a big change effort that's happened, if I'm sharing in a really good story, the way that this unfolded, the way that this came about, I'm also sharing how I think, right? I'm sharing the way my thought process went
Right.
through this entire
Right.
experience and strategy for the way that something has unfolded. That provides a lot of really helpful insight and clarity for the people that are looking to you to really understand, if I bring something to this leader of mine, how are they going to be able to think through it? What are the steps that they take so that we can be on the same page
Right.
and make decisions together, and to think through things in a way that brings us together rather than tears us apart. So it's just another piece of that, of really understanding who we are as leaders.
And it builds trust.
Mhm.
It builds trust because, that's such a simple way to connect with other people, to be able to build trust in a way that is, like you said, you're taking something that's really important to the company, or you're taking something that is a change that happens, and how you're going to convey that. I mean,
Yeah.
we work with companies all the time who go through change and are struggling really with conveying the message properly,
Mhm.
not just the facts and the bullet points, but the human side of that. How does this affect people?
Right.
How are we going to, be able to kind of come together? And the companies that do it really well are the ones who know how to do this effectively.
Right. Definitely. And I mean, we can talk about the ways not to do it, but we don't need to do that today.
No, it would be too long.
So with that in mind, what are so as I'm sure people might have seen a trend so far that we like to bring up 5 things, right? So 5 reasons why storytelling. So we also have 5 ways and means of which you can begin your storytelling journey and your practice of
Mhm.
storytelling. Um, so
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 let's
how
go
can
through
people
real quick.
start getting better?
Yeah. So, you can start with just a simple prompt. Find something, if you've ever done that, in your younger years as you're going through school, and here's a prompt, write about it, right? We've all probably done that at some point. But what is that simple thing? Maybe it's a question of, what is your leadership journey so far? Where have you come from? Why did you? How did you? All of those questions, right? And take a minute and just kind of craft that out. What does that look like? What did it look like for me to go through this leadership process, right?
Mm.
And then practice it. Practice it. Practice your story. I mean, people used to talk about that, 15-second elevator pitch or whatever
Right.
we call it these days. But,
Yeah.
really it's nothing more than learning how to tell your own story. Learning how to bring forth that most important piece of yourself to share with other people, to make that connection, to build that trust, right?
Mhm.
And then watch for feedback. Watch body language too. If you're with someone and say, "Hey, let me ask for feedback. Can you, how do you feel about this? Can you give me some thoughts, and critique this?" But watch body language when people lean in rather, when they're part of the story. They're in it.
Mhm.
They're listening to you. They're leaning in. Um, I don't know. People nod, right? I see that a lot
Mhm.
when I'm talking, and I'll watch, and people are doing this. I'm like, okay, they're with me, right?
Mhm.
Um, or you see laughter, you see smiles, all of the different things. What resonates for people when you see those things.
Yeah.
Make a mental note of that, right?
Yeah.
And I think, find that, uh, give them cues, find that thing, this is where to pay attention. When we
Mhm.
trigger that, I say, when I'm talking to people a lot, if you hear nothing else I said today, listen to this. And I
Mhm.
watch, and everyone's like, what is it? Right? They get real close, and everyone's just like, so if there's something that I really want to trigger, you know, gosh, I knew that it was going to be important when she said this.
Mhm.
Whatever that is leads me in, like, yep, I'm listening and paying attention.
Right.
And be brief, concise, clear as kind, right? So
Yes, absolutely.
Brene Brown says, but have clarity around what you're talking about.
Mhm.
Um, and then really think about, you're telling this story to the audience. Connect.
Yeah.
Find what resonates for them. Like I said, use those kinds of triggers and cues.
Definitely. The other thing I would suggest too is record yourself.
Yeah.
I know that there's
Nobody
like,
loves to
oh
do.
no, thank you. But
Oh,
I'll
I
be
do it all the
honest,
time.
it's incredibly helpful
Yeah.
to hear yourself,
Yep.
to see yourself.
Yep.
The how quickly we talk when we're nervous, or
Yes.
when the first few times that we have to go
Yep.
and give any kind of presentation or share anything, like just get it over with. I just want to be done. And so giving yourself that space to say, guess what? The first time's not going to be perfect.
No. And that's
Really,
okay.
no time's going to be perfect. And that first time is going to be rough.
Mhm.
And that's okay. That's a part of it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's one of the things that, and I know we're against
Yeah.
time, so I'm just gonna say one last thing, if that's okay.
Yeah.
When I think about storytelling, I think of two things. I think of my dad, who was one of the
Mm.
most masterful storytellers I've ever seen in my life, and got to learn from that. So I feel very honored and privileged to be able to be front row to that all the time. Um, and the second piece to that is, I remember back in the day when VH1 did their storytellers tour, right? And this was such a big thing. Those of us Gen Xers out there know what I'm talking about. I went to, in 98 or 99 or whatever it was, I went to the Meatloaf storytellers tour. And it was like him and a piano in this smaller, intimate setting. And it was him telling the story of each song as he sang it.
Mm.
And I'll tell you how impactful that was. I remember that, to me, that was one of the best concerts I ever went to, because it was this, you were in it with him, right? It wasn't just someone on stage singing. It was this intimate feel. And that always comes up for me when I think about, why is that so important? Well, because that's how we relate to each other.
Mm.
Like, I was so invested in that because of how he explained it. He wasn't even my favorite artist at the time, but it was one of my favorite experiences.
Mm-hmm.
So, again, take that for what it is. But, we would love to help you be able to do that more effectively.
Yeah. And so with that, we are also challenging anyone, or not challenging, I suppose, encouraging
Encouraging.
you.
There you go.
There it is. To join us and join us on one of these LinkedIn lives
Yeah.
and tell your story. We would love to hear your journey of leadership and where you are, and practice that art of storytelling. So again, reach out to us, LinkedIn. We've got, you can reach out to us on our contact page on teamjlcg.com, wherever feels the most right for you. We would love to hear your story, and give you the opportunity to share that with other people too.
Yeah. You never know who might need to hear you.
Mm-hmm. As someone once told me, your story may be the aspirin to someone else's headache. And I've never for some reason that one just really stuck
That
with me.
resonates. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
See, it
Yeah.
resonates.
I remember it from very long ago.
So real quick,
yeah.
for people, I just want to end with this. What color was the woman's shirt?
Thanks for coming. We'll see you next week.